I remember the stark white ceiling coming into focus as the beeping of monitors filled my ears. My wrists were tender from the IV drips. A doctor's face appeared above me, concern etched in his features. "Your body is shutting down from stress," he said firmly. "Whatever job is doing this to you, it's not worth your life." I tried to sit up, but my body felt like it was made of lead. How did I end up here? Just 6 months ago, I was so excited about my first real job after college. Now I was in a hospital bed, my body literally giving up. The doctor placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Another month like this, and we'd be having a very different conversation. As I lay there, a tear slid down my cheek. I thought about Christine's smug face, her cruel words, the file she had thrown at my head just days before. My boss had systematically broken me down until my body couldn't take it anymore. What I didn't know then was that this hospital stay would be the beginning of her downfall. Her smile would soon disappear forever. 6 months earlier, I practically floated through the glass doors of Kingston & Associates, the most prestigious labor consulting firm in the city. My degree was still fresh in my hand, and I couldn't believe they'd chosen me. The marble lobby gleamed under soft lighting as I nervously adjusted my new blazer. "Rebecca," the branch manager, Heather, greeted me with a wide smile. "Welcome to the team. Let me show you around." The office was modern and open. Glass partitions, sleek computers, people in crisp suits talking confidently on phones. I'd be helping companies navigate complex labor laws and regulations. It was exactly what I'd studied for. "Your direct supervisor is on maternity leave," Heather explained, showing me to my desk. "But don't worry, we'll take good care of you until Christine returns." I nodded eagerly, unable to hide my smile. My parents had been so proud when I got this job. Dad had even cried a little. This was my chance to prove myself in the real world. If only I'd known what was waiting for me when Christine returned. Those first 3 months were everything I dreamed a career could be. James, the senior consultant covering for Christine, was patient and encouraging. He gave me challenging assignments but never left me hanging. "You've got real talent for this," he told me after I successfully handled my first client meeting alone. Each morning I dove into cases with excitement. I stayed late to study precedents. I took notes on everything, determined to master every aspect of the job. Then came the call that changed everything. I was nervous, but prepared as I dialed the number for Globex Insurance, an international company we'd been trying to land for years. "Hello, this is Rebecca from Kingston & Associates," I said, surprising myself with how confident I sounded. 45 minutes later, I hung up and sat in shocked silence. Then I ran to James's office. "They want us to represent them." Globex actually said yes. The office erupted in cheers. Heather hugged me. James announced we were all going out for drinks. For that golden moment, I was the star. I had no idea I'd just sealed my fate. It was a Tuesday morning when Christine first returned. The office had been buzzing with excitement. Everyone wanted to meet her new baby. I'd bought a small gift and prepared a folder with detailed notes on everything I'd learned in her absence. She swept in, wearing an expensive suit, her dark hair cut in a sharp bob. Her smile seemed fixed in place as colleagues gathered around, cooing over baby pictures. "And this is Rebecca, your temporary replacement," Heather said, bringing her to my desk. "She's been exceptional, even landed the Globex account." Something flickered in Christine's eyes. Her smile tightened just slightly. "How fortunate," she said, barely glancing at my welcome folder. That afternoon, she called me into her office. I went in eagerly, ready to show her everything I'd been working on. "Rebecca," she said, leaning back in her chair, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but things will be different now that I'm back. Very different." Her smile never reached her eyes. I left feeling a strange chill despite the warm day outside. The changes were subtle at first. Christine would forget to include me in important emails. Client files would mysteriously disappear from my desk, only to reappear on hers. In meetings, she'd cut me off mid-sentence with a syrupy, "That's an interesting perspective, Rebecca, but let me explain how things actually work." One morning, I overheard her talking to Heather in the break room. "She's green, Heather. The Globex thing was beginner's luck. I've had to redo half her work." My cheeks burned. It wasn't true. My work was meticulous. James had said so himself. Later that day, a colleague whispered to me, "Christine did this to the last assistant too. She can't stand anyone getting attention." I laughed it off, not wanting to believe it. I'm sure it's just her readjusting after maternity leave. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The way she looked at me wasn't professional rivalry. It was something darker, something personal, and it was only going to get worse. The first public attack came during our Tuesday team meeting. I was presenting findings on a new case, something I'd stayed up until 2 a.m. preparing. So based on precedent, I believe the client has a strong— "Stop," Christine interrupted, her voice cutting through the room like ice. "This is completely wrong." The room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes shifted between us. "You've misunderstood the basic elements of the Harmon ruling," she continued, rising from her chair. "Did you even read the case files?" I felt my face grow hot. "Yes, because this," she snatched my carefully prepared report from the table, "is the kind of mistake a first-year law student would make." She proceeded to tear apart my analysis point by point. Some colleagues looked down, uncomfortable. Others watched with a mix of pity and relief that they weren't in my shoes. When it was finally over, she smiled that tight smile. "Why don't you take notes while I explain the correct approach?" I nodded, blinking back tears, my hands shaking as I picked up my pen. It was the first time, but far from the last. "Rebecca, I need the Westfield analysis by morning." "Rebecca, call these 50 potential clients today." "Rebecca, the Franklin case needs a complete review, all 300 pages." The assignments piled up like a fortress around my desk. I started coming in at 6 a.m. and leaving well after 8 p.m. While others went home to their families, I was drowning in impossible deadlines. The worst part? Christine would assign urgent tasks right as I was finishing something else. It was like she was watching, waiting for the moment I thought I might catch my breath. "You need to manage your time better," she'd say when I looked overwhelmed. I started skipping lunch, then dinner. My weight dropped. Dark circles formed under my eyes. My apartment became just a place where I slept for a few hours before returning to the office. One evening, I found myself alone in the bathroom, splashing water on my face, trying not to cry. In the mirror, a gaunt stranger looked back at me. "You can do this," I whispered to my reflection. "Just keep going." But my body was already sending warning signals I was too determined to hear. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. I was updating Christine on the Miller case, a straightforward workers' compensation claim, when I mentioned a detail she'd overlooked. Actually, the employee's medical records show the injury was pre-existing, which affects— "Are you saying I made a mistake?" Her voice dropped dangerously low. "No, I just noticed this detail and thought—" "You thought?" She stood up suddenly, her chair rolling backward. "You're a first-year associate who barely knows how to file paperwork." The entire office went silent. I could feel everyone watching, pretending to work. "I was just trying to help," I said quietly. That's when she grabbed the heavy case file from her desk and threw it directly at my head. I ducked just in time. The file hit the glass partition behind me with a loud crack, and papers exploded everywhere. "Clean that up," she hissed, and never questioned my work again. No one moved to help me as I knelt on the floor, gathering scattered papers with trembling hands. No one said a word. In that moment, something inside me broke a little. After the file incident, I gathered my courage and asked Christine for a private word. My heart hammered as I closed her office door. "Christine, I want to do a good job here," I began, keeping my voice steady. "But I don't think I can work effectively when there's—" "When I what?" she asked, her voice dangerously soft. "The yelling, the excessive workload, throwing things, it's creating a hostile workplace." She leaned back in her chair, a slow smile spreading across her face. Then she laughed, actually laughed out loud. "A hostile workplace? Is that what you think this is?" I nodded, trying to maintain eye contact. She leaned forward, all humor vanishing. "What are you going to do about it? Report me to the Labor Department?" Her smile turned cruel. "You can try that. I've won many cases. I eat complaints like yours for breakfast." My blood ran cold as she continued. "Remember what we do here, Rebecca. I know every loophole, every defense. So please, go ahead and file your little complaint." I left her office in silence, her mocking laughter following me back to my desk. But I wasn't as helpless as she thought. My body began to rebel against the constant stress. First came the migraines, blinding pain that made the computer screen blur. Then insomnia. I'd lie awake until 3 a.m., dreading the next day, only to drag myself back to the office 3 hours later. My hands developed a constant tremor. I started dropping things, pens, coffee cups, my phone. Colleagues noticed but said nothing. They were all afraid of Christine. "You look terrible," my roommate said one morning. "You need to see a doctor." "I'm fine," I insisted, swallowing another antacid for the stomach pain that never seemed to go away. But I wasn't fine. I was drowning. One evening, alone in the office bathroom, I found myself gasping for air, my heart racing so fast I thought it might explode. My vision tunneled, and the room spun around me. I gripped the sink, certain I was dying. Later I learned it was a panic attack, the first of many. Still, I kept coming to work. Still, I tried to meet impossible demands. I was determined not to let Christine win, not to prove her right. My body had other plans. The day of my collapse started like any other nightmare. I'd been at the office until midnight, gone home for 3 hours of fitful sleep, then returned before dawn. My hands shook as I gulped down my 4th coffee. Christine dropped a new stack of files on my desk. "I need these reviewed and summarized by noon." I looked at the mountain of papers, then at the clock, 9:30 a.m. It was physically impossible. "I don't think I can." "That sounds like a you problem," she cut me off. Noon. By 11, the room was spinning. Black spots danced in my vision. The words on the page swam together like alphabet soup. I couldn't remember the last time I'd eaten a proper meal. I stood up to get another coffee, hoping it would help me focus. That's when the floor seemed to tilt sideways. I heard someone call my name from what seemed like a great distance. Then, nothing. I woke up in an ambulance, an oxygen mask on my face, paramedics hovering over me. Behind them, I caught a glimpse of the office gathered around, faces shocked. All except Christine's. She looked annoyed. 3 days in the hospital gave me clarity I hadn't had in months. The doctors were blunt. My body was shutting down from extreme stress and exhaustion. My blood pressure was dangerously high. I was severely dehydrated and malnourished. "Whatever's happening at your job," the doctor said, "it's killing you, literally." On my last day in the hospital, I made a decision. I would speak to Heather, the branch manager. Surely she couldn't ignore a medical emergency caused by workplace conditions. Back at the office, I requested a private meeting. Heather's face was sympathetic as I sat down. "Heather, I need to talk to you about Christine," I began, my voice stronger than I expected. I told her everything. The impossible workload, the public humiliation, the thrown file, the threats when I mentioned reporting her. I showed Heather the doctor's note stating my collapse was stress-induced. "This can't continue," I finished. "It's not just unprofessional, it's dangerous." Heather nodded gravely, making notes. "I had no idea it was this bad, Rebecca. Thank you for coming to me. Let me handle this from here." Relief washed over me. Finally, someone was listening. Finally, something would change. How wrong I was. I arrived at work the next morning feeling cautiously hopeful. Maybe things would improve now that Heather knew the truth. That hope died quickly. The receptionist gave me a strange look as I walked in. "Rebecca, Heather wants you to wait at your desk today. Don't attend any meetings until further notice." Christine wasn't at her desk. Neither was Heather. The office felt unusually quiet, with colleagues avoiding my eyes. I sat alone, watching the clock tick. 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m. No assignments, no calls, no emails. Just silence. A knot formed in my stomach as the isolation stretched on. This didn't feel like protection. It felt like punishment. By lunch, still sitting alone while others whispered in groups, I realized with sick certainty what was happening. Heather hadn't been taking notes to help me. She'd been documenting how to get rid of me. At 2:13 p.m., my computer pinged. A new email had arrived from HR. Subject: employment status, confidential. My hands trembled as I clicked to open it. The first line told me everything I needed to know. "Following recent discussions, we regret to inform you that your employment with Kingston & Associates is being terminated, effective immediately." I stared at the termination email in disbelief. There hadn't been any recent discussions. There had been no warning, no performance improvement plan, no formal hearing, just my plea for help, and now, this. The email continued with cold corporate language. Your personal items will be packed by security and sent to your home address. Please surrender your access card to reception before leaving the premises. My vision blurred with tears of anger and betrayal. I scrolled down, looking for some explanation, something that would make sense of this nightmare. There it was, buried in the third paragraph. This decision follows reports of disruptive behavior, inability to meet basic job requirements, and concerns about your fit within our organizational culture. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Christine had gotten to Heather first. She had twisted everything, painted me as the problem, not her. And Heather had believed her, or at least pretended to. I felt sick. They were firing me for being bullied to the point of hospitalization. But something changed in me at that moment. The shock and hurt transformed into something else. Cold, clear determination. As I sat at my desk, reading and rereading the termination email, pieces began falling into place. This wasn't an impulsive decision. This was premeditated. Christine must have gone to Heather immediately after I left her office yesterday. She would have spun a story. Poor work performance, attitude problems, inability to handle pressure. She would have recommended termination before I could cause more problems. And Heather, wanting to avoid conflict with her star consultant, had agreed. They thought they had me cornered. A young, inexperienced graduate against a powerful company and its star lawyer. David versus Goliath, only in their version, Goliath wins easily. What they didn't know was that I'd been documenting everything. Every late-night email timestamp showing impossible deadlines. Every witness to Christine's public outbursts. Photos of the bruise from when the file hit the wall next to my head. Doctors' reports linking my collapse directly to workplace stress. Most importantly, I had recordings, small voice memos captured on my phone during the worst of Christine's tirades, including her exact words. "What are you going to do about it? Report me to the Labor Department. I've won many cases." I took a deep breath. They had just made the biggest mistake of their careers. Security hadn't arrived yet to escort me out. I had maybe 15 minutes before they realized I'd seen the email. 15 minutes to face my tormentors. I walked calmly to the conference room where I could see Heather and Christine through the glass walls. They looked up, surprised, as I entered without knocking. "Rebecca," Heather began awkwardly, "we were just about to call you in." "To tell me I'm fired?" I said, my voice steady. "I got the email." Christine smirked. "It's for the best, Rebecca. Clearly, you're not cut out for the pressures of this industry." I looked her directly in the eyes. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid. "That's interesting coming from someone who threw a file at my head," I replied evenly. Heather shifted uncomfortably. "Rebecca, these accusations aren't helpful." "They're not accusations," I interrupted. "They're documented facts." Christine's smirk faltered slightly. "I came to this company eager to learn and contribute," I continued. "Instead, I was bullied, overworked, and literally put in the hospital. And now you're firing me for it." I placed my hands flat on the table and leaned forward. "That was a mistake." "What exactly do you mean by mistake?" Christine asked, her voice dripping with condescension. I reached into my bag and pulled out a thick manila folder. The irony wasn't lost on me. A folder similar to the one she'd thrown at my head. "This," I said, placing it on the table, "is my insurance policy." I opened it slowly, revealing neatly organized sections with colored tabs. Section 1. Emails showing impossible deadlines and after-hours work demands. Section 2. Witness statements from 5 colleagues regarding public humiliation. Section 3. Medical documentation linking my hospitalization directly to workplace stress. Their faces began to change as I continued. "Section 4 is my personal favorite," I said, pulling out my phone. "Voice recordings." I pressed play. Christine's voice filled the room. "What are you going to do about it?" "Report me to the Labor Department? I've won many cases." All color drained from Christine's face. Heather looked like she might be sick. "Hostile work environment. Workplace bullying. Constructive dismissal. Retaliatory firing. Failure to provide reasonable accommodations following a medical emergency." I listed each violation calmly. "And those are just the beginning." Their shocked silence was the sweetest sound I'd heard in months. Christine recovered first, her lawyer instincts kicking in. Recording conversations without consent is illegal in this state, she said, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. Not when there's no reasonable expectation of privacy, I countered. Like when you're shouting in an open office, or throwing things at employees. Heather cleared her throat. Rebecca, let's not be hasty. Perhaps we can discuss. Discuss what? I asked. My wrongful termination? The hostile work environment? Or how about the fact that your star consultant admitted on recording that she's faced similar complaints before? That got Heather's attention. Her head snapped toward Christine. Similar complaints? She repeated. Christine shot me a look of pure hatred. She's lying. Am I? I turned back to my folder. I've been in contact with Melissa Chen, my predecessor. She has quite a story to tell. This was a bluff. I'd only heard rumors about the previous assistant. But watching Christine's face, I knew I'd struck gold. This is absurd, Christine hissed, but panic flashed in her eyes. Heather stood up suddenly. I need to make a call. Both of you stay right here. The door closed behind her, leaving Christine and me alone in a silence thick with tension. 40 minutes later, I sat across from Kingston and Associates legal counsel and HR director. Christine was conspicuously absent. Heather sat at the end of the table, looking years older. After reviewing the situation, the legal counsel began carefully. We believe there has been a serious misunderstanding. I almost laughed at the corporate euphemism for, we realize we're about to get sued into oblivion. We would like to offer you a settlement, he continued, sliding a document across the table. I glanced at the figure and kept my face neutral, though my heart leaped. It was more money than I'd make in 5 years. In exchange for your discretion and agreement not to pursue legal action, the HR director added. I took my time reading the document, remembering how Christine had always rushed me. The irony of using her own tactics against her wasn't lost on me. I have 2 additional conditions, I said finally. They exchanged nervous glances. First, Christine receives a formal reprimand that stays in her personnel file. Heather nodded stiffly. Second, I want a letter of recommendation, and I want Christine to write it. Their surprise was evident. Why would you want a recommendation from someone who treated you so poorly? The HR director asked. I smiled because I want her to have to put in writing just how valuable I am. 3 days later, I returned to collect my personal items and sign the final paperwork. The office was quiet, with everyone working diligently at their desks, or pretending to. Christine sat in her office, shoulders rigid as she typed on her computer. Through the glass wall, I could see her scowling at the screen. She's writing your recommendation letter, Heather said quietly, appearing at my side. She's on the 3rd draft. Legal keeps rejecting her versions for being insufficient. I nodded, satisfaction warming my chest. Christine had to praise the very person she'd tried to destroy, and she had to make it convincing, or face further consequences. When I was called into the conference room to receive the letter, Christine was there, her face a rigid mask. She couldn't even look at me as she slid the paper across the table. I read it slowly, savoring each glowing sentence. Rebecca demonstrated exceptional analytical abilities. Showed remarkable resilience and dedication. Would be an asset to any organization fortunate enough to employ her. Each word must have been like swallowing poison for her to write. Is this accurate, Christine? I asked innocently. Her eyes flashed with hatred, but her voice was eerily pleasant. Completely accurate. Her smile had never looked more forced or more defeated. I hadn't planned to tell anyone about the settlement or what happened at Kingston and Braith Associates. I signed an NDA after all, but strangely, I didn't have to say anything. Within weeks, the whispers started. Former colleagues began reaching out, first one, then another, then several more. Is it true Christine got written up? I heard there was a settlement after you left. Things are changing around here since you stood up to her. James, the senior consultant who had trained me, called to check in. Whatever you did, he said, it caused an earthquake. HR is suddenly reviewing all complaints from the past 2 years. Christine's on thin ice. I carefully avoided confirming or denying anything specific. But I didn't hide my satisfaction either. More messages trickled in over the following weeks. People were speaking up about their own experiences with Christine. The dam had broken. They're interviewing everyone who worked under her, a former colleague texted. It's like they're building a case. I smiled at my phone. I hadn't planned to start a revolution, but I wasn't sorry about it either. Sometimes all it takes is one person refusing to be a victim for others to find their courage too. The wheels of justice were turning, faster than I'd expected. 3 months after I left Kingston & Associates, I was thriving at my new job with a competing firm. My confidence had returned. The health issues vanished once the toxic stress was removed from my life. Then came the news I never expected to hear so quickly. Christine's gone. My old friend from accounting texted one Tuesday morning. Fired yesterday. Security walked her out. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Christine, the untouchable star consultant, the woman who'd made my life hell, had finally faced consequences. More details emerged throughout the day. After my departure triggered a review, other complaints surfaced. Former employees came forward. Current staff finally spoke up. The picture that emerged was damning. Years of bullying, intimidation, and taking credit for others' work. She tried to blame it all on Heather, James told me over coffee later that week. Said Heather should have supervised her better. But there were too many witnesses, too many incidents. The final straw, apparently, was discovering Christine had been claiming sole credit for the Globex account, the one I had landed. When Globex executives mentioned the impressive young woman who brought us on board, the truth couldn't be hidden any longer. Christine's empire of fear had finally crumbled. And I had lit the first match. 6 months passed. I was excelling at my new firm, respected, valued, even being groomed for management. The settlement money had allowed me to pay off my student loans and put a down payment on a small condo. I rarely thought about Christine anymore. The nightmares had stopped. The anxiety that once gripped me had faded to a distant memory. Then, on a rainy Tuesday, I saw her. I was meeting a client at an upscale downtown restaurant when she walked in. She looked different. Her sharp bob grown out, her designer suit replaced by something less expensive. She was meeting someone at the bar, an interview from the looks of the portfolio she carried. Our eyes met briefly across the room. Recognition flashed in hers, followed by something I'd never seen there before. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. I gave her a small nod, then returned to my client conversation. Later, I overheard a snippet as I passed the bar. Difficult to explain the gap in my employment. Christine was saying to the interviewer, her voice lacking its former confidence. I didn't linger. I didn't need to. Karma had done its work without any further effort from me. Outside in the fresh air, I felt a strange sense of closure. Christine wasn't thriving, but neither was she destroyed. She was simply facing the natural consequences of her actions. That was enough for me. On the 1-year anniversary of my hospital stay, I treated myself to dinner at my favorite restaurant. It was a small celebration of how far I'd come, from hospital bed to rising star at my new firm. As I sipped my wine, I reflected on everything that had happened. The bullying, the collapse, the confrontation, the victory. I realized something important. I didn't hate Christine anymore. The anger that once burned through me had cooled. In its place was something else. Not forgiveness exactly, but a kind of understanding. Christine had been insecure, threatened by a younger woman's success, afraid of being overshadowed. Her behavior was inexcusable, but it came from a place of fear, not strength. My phone buzzed with a message from my new boss. Great work on the Henderson case. The client specifically praised your approach. Bonus coming your way. I smiled, remembering how different this felt from my time at Kingston. Here, success was celebrated, not punished. Mentorship replaced sabotage. Teamwork trumped ego. The experience with Christine had taught me valuable lessons. About standing up for myself, about documenting everything, about recognizing toxic environments. But most importantly, about the kind of leader I wanted to be and the kind I never wanted to become. I raised my glass in a silent toast, to survival, to growth, and to leaving bitterness behind. 2 years after leaving Kingston Associates, I was promoted to senior consultant at my new firm. The announcement came with an office celebration, complete with champagne and congratulatory speeches. As I looked around at my colleagues, people who respected me, challenged me, supported me, I thought about how differently my career could have gone if I'd simply accepted Christine's abuse as just how things are. Standing up hadn't been easy. It had been terrifying, But that moment of courage had changed everything. Later that evening, I found myself remembering Christine's smile, that cold, cruel curve of lips that never reached her eyes. The smile that appeared whenever she put me down or watched me struggle. The smile that fed on my suffering. That smile had disappeared the moment I stood up in that conference room and placed my documentation on the table. The moment she realized I wasn't powerless after all. Now, as I accepted congratulations from my team, my own smile was genuine, warm with the knowledge that I had not just survived, but thrived. Sometimes I wonder if Christine learned anything from what happened. I hope she did. I hope she found a way to succeed without tearing others down. But whether she changed or not, I knew one thing for certain. Her smile no longer had any power over me. And that was the greatest victory of all.